Lesson 7. What is two-point perspective? Two-point perspective is when your subject or character is looking at an object or objects at an angle. Two-point perspective will have 2 points that can move from side to side on the horizon line, giving an illusion of depth. Two-point perspective will commonly have visually slanted vanishing lines on the graph connected to the vanishing points. Sometimes you may not be able to see a clear representation of two-point perspective in a reference or illustration because one vanishing point may be stretched out so far off to the left or right of the horizon line, giving a false idea of a straight horizontal line. Because once a vanishing point gets stretched out, so does the vanishing lines connected to the vanishing point get stretched out. So eventually they seem like straight lines, horizontally or vertically. You may even mistake it as one-point perspective. Lesson 8. What is three-point perspective? Three-point perspective will commonly be used to illustrate a dramatic scene of height in paintings like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, movies like Godzilla x Kong, and drawings, and games like Titanfall. Using a camera, for example, tilting the camera down a few degrees will make the third vanishing point visible, as well as tilting the camera up will do the same thing. The third vanishing point can also be used to rotate your object vertically. You can spin it around and give a certain amount of depth, making a object seem tilted from different perspectives. So regarding my statement in bold letters, vanishing points 3 and 4 can move up and down just like how vanishing points 1 and 2 can move left and right. Now, to illustrate that, it's mostly going to be animated, but I'm going to try to draw it. So that's matter of fact, I'll do a sequence. So let's say you have your little box here. I'm gonna put down my grid. I'm gonna line up my point on the horizon line, and I just have a box. It's not at an angle. It's not tilting anywhere. It's just there. Now, let's say I want to like rotate it. Just want to move it around a bit. Now, so 2-point perspective. The only reason why 1-point perspective exists is because all the other vanishing points besides the one in the center is spread out so far that you get straight vertical and horizontal lines. So now our second vanishing point comes in. Now you can actually see it. So then you still have your vanishing point in the center, your 1 point perspective vanishing point, but now the box is now tilted, not tilted, my bad, rotated over to the left. Let me highlight that because it's kind of scribbled in. And these vanishing points are a bit close to each other, so there's a little bit of distortion, but not too much where you can't notice the shape. So there's our second box. Now this vanishing point, the 1 point perspective vanishing point, if you want this box to rotate to the right, this vanishing point is going to now move over here. So now, instead of this vanishing point moving, well, this vanishing point is going to move, but now it's going to replace this vanishing point. It's going to move over here, or it can just move right here. It depends on how much of a rotation that you want. So now, this vanishing point right here moved over here, and this vanishing point now replaced the 1 point perspective vanishing point. Now we have our little rotation to the right. And if you wanted to tilt, then we're going to have to add our vertical points. Now these are now visible. What happens when these are visible? You may ask. Well, you get a tilted object. So now that these are visible, or just one of them are visible, because there's only going to be 3 points for one object. If you're doing multiple objects where there's like a background, you have multiple shapes in the background, multiple shapes are moving in different directions, then you're going to have multiple vanishing points. But for one shape, it's just going to be 3 points for one singular shape. Now you have this point in the center, this point to the right. Might have made a little bit of distortion here, but that's okay. Let's make the vertical axis a little bit taller. Make them more further apart so there's less distortion. And here we go. Our shape is tilted. And we are done. So let me highlight that. And vice versa for the bottom vertical vanishing point. 3 and 4 point perspective. I really hate those names, but let's stick with them for now because that's how you got to research this information. So, vice versa for the vanishing point on the bottom, point in the center, on the right, it's distorted, so we gotta go further down. But this is the problem here, so this has to go further over here. And There we go. There's our shape. Let me just highlight that. And that's like 3 or 4 point perspective. So there's our sequence. And if I didn't nail this information in the coffin, I'm going to show you the animation that I did. This is all my artwork. Don't mind this. So I'm just going to play this. In this animation, the vanishing points are moving to the right and to the left, horizontally, changing vertically as well. Get a tilt, and then it sits back down vertically. This did not take me long, and that's because I drew my basis. You see that little box there? That faded box. I used that, and then I continued to sculpt out everything. I'm not going to teach that yet, because that's a whole different video, but I may teach it later. So like and subscribe please. Okay, moving on. Lesson 9. What is 4-point perspective? 4-point perspective is similar to its vertical sibling, 3-point perspective. But now you can tilt objects up or down because, well, now you have a second vanishing point on the vertical grid. You have 2, so now you can look up and down. Lesson 10. What is 5-point perspective? 5-point perspective is the combination of all of vanishing points, all of the locations, all of the tilts and rotations, containing 2 points on the left and right of the grid is 2-point perspective. 2 points on the bottom and top of the grid is 4 and 3-point perspective. And lastly, 1 point in the middle for 1-point perspective. I really love and hate the video games that I'm using to represent this visual explanation.
Life as an Overwatch agent had begun.
Final lesson. All these vanishing points now collected on a grid can now be used to rotate, tilt, animate, and illustrate your subjects. The 3 and 4 point perspective represents height, and 2 point perspective represents width. I find it easy to think of drawing perspective as if I was filming a video. First, you need to set up your camera angles and heights. A couple of examples of these angles would be bird's eye view,